Alright, so this is looking good. That's on. Those are on. And let's make sure the stream looks good. Okay. It's looking pretty good. Alright, sweet. We're rocking and rolling. If you excuse the pun. Alright, I'm Dino, and I'm back again to continue on this 5th day of the citrine that I've been cutting. I'm going to be doing, or I have been doing, a double cross square pattern, which is by the late Jeff Graham. He's a pretty good, or one of the better, if not best, depending on who you talk to, um, gem designers for people who are looking to learn to start to cut gems and also to just do a bunch of different types of patterns. Um, so in the last video, I ended up covering the fourth and fifth of the 7 pavilion facets. The pavilion in this case is what you can see in the lower right hand screen on the bore cam or close-up view, and that is the sharp part at the top of the or the bottom of the stone. Right now we're cutting the bottom first and then working to the other side of the stone, which is called the crown. But first off, we got to get done with the pavilion, get it all polished up before we can swap it over and do the top side. So with that being said, I'm going to stop talking and start cutting. So right now I'm going to be starting again on the next set of facets. We did P5 like I said yesterday, so we're going to go on to P6. And P6 is the same degrees as P5, so it should be fairly quick and simple to get this done. So let's go here. So I've got my setup here, my lights and whatnot. I'm going to turn up the brightness just a little bit because it's a little dark. Now I can kind of see what I'm doing. So first off, for the P6 facet, we're going to start at index 10. We're going to do a total of 8 cuts around the total stone. That way we can end up cutting all of these 6 or P6 facets. So I'm going to start here, and the instructions say cut to center point and meet girdle. Okay. Trying to figure... Well, let's see exactly what this looks like. I'm just going to lightly touch this and see what changes. Sometimes if you don't quite know, if you can't quite imagine what you're thinking, you just got to do a quick test cut, see what changes, and then that should give you an idea from there what is actually changing. Okay, so this looks like on this cut, it might not be very visible, but right here on the very top, right kind of where my pliers are, there's a little bit of a whiter section right there that's got a lot more light to it, right there. That is going to basically travel down the stone until it hits the girdle edge right here. So we're basically going to cut from there to the girdle edge and then be done with this facet as well. Okay. Yeah, this one's going to cut pretty quickly, so I don't have to apply too much pressure. Just light even strokes up and down. I'm barely applying any pressure other than what my hand is pressing on. So there's not a whole lot that you have to do other than just kind of make sure that you're not going to overcut, because just like cutting any sort of precise measurements, you measure twice, cut once, because you can only do it once. And sorry, I just thought something caught my eye, but I was just triggered the light. So yeah, just taking it easy, slow as you go until you can get to where you need to go. Okay, this is nearly there already. Once I get this first facet done, I'll pull it up to the camera and show you all what it looks like. Okay, almost there. Now it's just a matter of light touch and goes, a couple back and forths, and then you're done. The blue light actually does help because it lets me see the parts of the stone that are wet versus the ones that are dry, and so I can see the reflection much clearer. Alright, nearly there. Okay, at this point, I'm actually close enough to where I'm going to use my lens just about touching. Alright, so there we are. So now I can actually show what it looks like. So that really white facet that you're seeing there in the reflection, that is the cut that was just done. So the prior facets that we did were this one right here and this one right here. So these two cut to make this a triangle, and now this one right here is cutting to add this special piece right here down and this piece right here. So that or this newest cut will be done another 7 times around the stone to basically give it that more geometric type pattern that will help capture the light and refract it back in a hopefully brilliant pattern once the stone is completely cut. So without further ado, on to the next. So going from 10 to 14. Now this one's going to be a lot quicker because most of the work, most of the work was done with the facet that was just completed at 10. So I'm just going to go here and very quickly, oh, before I do that actually, wanted to make sure that I set my 0 for my other facets. Okay, there we go. So now I know on the other facets if I've achieved the same depth of cut as this facet at index number 10. Okay. Yeah, this one's going to cut very quickly. In fact, I'm nearly already done. Just gonna throw on my glasses for my magnifiers. These magnifiers I ended up picking up on good old Amazon for about 15 bucks, so it wasn't super expensive. Not gonna break the bank. I have a 15 and a 10 power of this. I also have a 20 and 25. However, I never really need to go beyond a 10, just because 10 is um, enough magnification for me to see what I'm doing for some of these cuts. And also, if you do a higher power magnification in one eye or the other, for a prolonged period of times, it can kind of make you feel all woozy, or at least it does for me. So I've ended up just setting this to the 10. That way I can kind of use it for a bit before I start getting disoriented. Because you'll get to a point where you close one eye or the other to look through it, and that way you can actually see without focusing on the other non-magnified eye, which can cause you to kind of get a weird feeling in the eye that you've been constantly using magnified. So this is getting pretty close now. Oh, forgot to turn the water back on. So I just almost was cutting with a dry lap, which is never good. But in this case, luckily I caught it. It can do a little bit more damage and cause excess scratching, because you just have basically dry particulate that's going around that's getting caught in the lap itself. And when it gets caught in the lap, it ends up um, causing the aggregate that's within the pores of the lap. Pores is a poor word, but within the grit of the lap, and it can cause excess scratching on the surface of the material. Okay, fairly close here. Okay. All right, there we go. So this specific set of facets also has the opposite effect of creating, just like the other one created the triangle in the middle of the stone, just above the P4 facet. This one is creating a triangle at the edge. So as you can see here, now we have this chevron right here and right here. And those are the two newest cuts that I just did, and it creates this triangle off the edge. So now you have some extra geometry that's on the stone to capture light and bounce it and refract it around within the stone. So it's a really cool design. Sometimes you don't know how it's going to look until you actually do it, and then it's like, wow, this looks really neat. So on to the next. Did just forget to turn that back on again, but luckily the lap was still fairly wet, so shouldn't be too much issue. Okay. this is getting pretty close to the bottom. I'm going to throw back on my magnifier. The other reason I'm using my magnifier now versus on some of the other cuts where I wasn't is when you get to the last couple sets of facets, it's more noticeable if there is an error. In earlier facets, you can usually cover it up, especially with a more complex um, geometrical pattern, with the next set of facets. Now, is that a good practice? No. But you can also kind of tell your meet points a lot easier because you have less geometry that you're trying to match up. Um, the more different cuts you have, the more everything has to line up perfect in order for the next set to look perfect. Otherwise, if one's just a smidge off in one, then the next one will look a smidge off, you'll overcorrect, and now things won't quite match up, and it never looks good. So when it comes to matching geometry and matching in different types of cuts and facets, I'll tend to put on the glasses just to be sure. Okay. I think just a smidge more. There we go. So now we're matching up on this side as well. That's that bright white facet that you see there. That was the newest cut. So now we're going to do this side, the opposite side, which is 38, I believe. Yes, 38. Alright. This is getting uber close. Didn't quite have a perfect meet up there, so I had to overcut just a smidge to make the girdle meet up. But that shouldn't be super noticeable unless you're using a microscope. And so this is what this side looks like. Or a bore cam. Again, just getting those chevrons to kind of line up. So on to the next. Excuse me. smidge more. There we go. That's looking sharp. Cool. So again, the bright white facet there is the one that was just cut. I was trying to meet up with that. Let's see if I can get this to focus a bit. It's trying to meet up right there on the edge of the girdle. So just where the frosted meets the polished facet there along the band here. So. Should probably, yep, that's right. Oh, while I do that, I want to make sure that I'm keeping up. Yeah, there we go. Oh, 1 second. I'm trying to make sure that my stream is looking good because I don't want to. I had an issue on the last video, and actually that brings up a good thing. I wanted to apologize. On the last video, I ended up getting to about the 45-minute mark, and then my computer apparently froze, and it didn't save any of the information. There wasn't very much that was lost in terms of content. It was mostly just me going in there really quickly and finishing up the couple last cuts. So not a lot had been actually lost. Again, though, I do apologize. I don't know why I did it. It just apparently failed. So in the meantime, let me get to my channel. There we go. And now I can actually see it. Alright, so pick on my glasses. This is also... Oh no. For some reason I was thinking this was the second to the last cut, but it is not. So... okay. So sometimes too, when you're cutting a stone, you have to be able to figure out how to cover up mistakes that you'd priorly done. It does happen every once in a while. You will get a mistake on something, and so you have to figure it out. Sometimes that's by overcutting everything, but not always, because other times you already got other geometry that you're trying to match with, so you can't overcut too much. So sometimes you just have to blend it and get it to be less noticeable, especially when you're first learning. When you're experienced, I'm sure you don't have that problem as much, but definitely when you're learning, there's some things that you just gotta know how to correct for so that you don't end up feeling like you've ruined the stone completely. This is almost there. I feel like that's my favorite word to say, but it's fairly true. Okay. And then from here we're going on to 82. So for this P6 facet, this is the second to the last cut I'll be doing for this. After this is going to be on to the P7, which is the final of the Pavilion cuts. One other thing that I may end up doing just because I haven't quite decided yet is I might actually polish up these last couple facets I've done, since they were all the exact same degrees, and that way I don't have to come back and try and remember how I had the machine set up prior to get a proper polish. It's kind of weird because under the light, since the light is a blue and the stone is a yellow, the stone looks kind of purpley like amethyst, so I keep looking at it thinking, I'm cutting amethyst. Nope, I'm just cutting citrine with purple light on it. I mean, there's within the same family of stone, the quartz variety, so it's not that big of a difference, but still enough. Can't tell. Oh, just a smidge more. Nope. There we go. I'm happy with that. Alright, and now this is the last P6 cut. So, got right here. This side is cutting fairly quick in comparison to the other side. I'm already almost done. Sometimes you can have that too. It just will cut a little faster on one side than it does on another. Yep, I'm basically already done with this side. So there we go. Okay. So now y'all see. I'm also going to try and change it to another color or turn down this light. There we go. That works a little better. So we got there we go. Basically, that white chevron you see right there is what we've cut on, or I've cut on this round. So goes around, creates kind of like that heart slash like cow skull type design by adding in those chevrons. This one looks a little bit off. I might actually overcut one of these just a smidge because some of these are not lining up. Another way I can tell is off the top of the stone. The top of the stone where the cullet is, or the point. If you look at the top, you'll be able to see that. Maybe I can get it to focus more. I have to turn down the intensity real quick. Turn down the intensity and give it a more or different color. It's a little bit more white. There we go. There we go. So, no, actually the blue might have been better. I keep thinking that there might be a better color, and I still keep coming back to that blue. So, I'll probably adjust it just a smidge to make things line up a little better. This is an example of me overcutting just a smidge. But actually, I'm not going to do very much more because I can cut the next set. That will take care of most of the unevenness. Okay, there we go. I think it may be partially due to the um, the slop that I have in my machine. It can tend to move around a lot more than I'm intending. That's why this will probably be one of the last videos where I use this machine primarily. I've got another machine that a family member has that I'm going to be starting to use. Just got to start learning how that works. Because it's slightly different in how it works, but it's a lot more accurate, which is what I'm trying to go for. Because sometimes there's just too much slop that causes things to happen that you don't expect them to. So, but for the most part, it's looking pretty good. Okay. I was gonna round up, but I think I'm just gonna, or not round up. I was gonna polish this, but I think actually I'm just gonna end up doing the next set of cuts. And before I do that, I need to go get some more water, so I'll be right back. Okay, now I'm back. There we go. Perfect. Ooh, that is very blue. There we go. Alright, so, that's right, I was gonna do. Gonna adjust this to 41. Okay, and this is for the last set of facets, which is at the very end of the stone, or the cullet, I should say. And that will take out most of the noise. Okay. Just quickly gathering my bearings. Alright. Alright, so basically with this cut, where you see the chevron right there, grab my pointer, the chevron right here, on both sides, it's going to cut right along this right here and cut off the tip of this point. So instead of the point being 8-sided, it's going to become a 4-sided point. You'll see what I mean in one sec. Okay. So, before I do that as well, since this is slightly different, I'm going to raise the machine up so I can get as close to 41 degrees as possible. This is going to cut fairly quickly too. And I'm just meeting P6. There we go, now I can see better. turn on the light for this one too. I have a light on here. Sure it's working. Yeah, it's working. Okay. So now with this one, I want it to be as precise as possible. So I'm going to set my dial indicator to whatever this is indicating. That way the next four can be exactly the same depth of cut. Okay, there we go. So basically what this is going to look like now, might be able to see if I turn down the intensity a little. So you now have that white, there we go, that's a good one. You now have that flat facet there on the face of the stone, right there. That is now meeting with the other side as well, just opposite of the camera. So I've got two more of those, and then officially the pavilion is officially pre-cut, or at least rough cut. And then at this point, I'll end up stopping and then putting on polish across all of the facets. So the cutting part, especially with my 600 grit here, is going to be very quick in comparison to the polishing. The polishing is going to take a lot more time. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get all the polishing done in another one video. It'll probably be closer to two. Polishing takes a long time, especially if you don't quite have the angles right, because you're basically trying to match the exact angle that it was at the cutting with what it is with the polishing. So any changes that happen in between then, even subtle, machine slop, where I place the actual head of the machine and everything, can cause very subtle differences that then make it a bit longer to polish than it would have been to cut. So anyway, back to this. It's turning out very nice though. I'm quite pleased so far. Turn on the light so I can see. Okay, this side's already done. Now the last cut. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Alright. So officially, the pavilion is done in its rough cut form. So let me get a little bit different of an angle. So you can see the complex level of geometry that is on here. Get this to focus a little bit more. Kind of looks like a geometric mountain, if you want to call it that. But you have several different facets, so I'll turn off my water. So this is the girdle 1, girdle 2. 3 is right here. Or actually, I'm sorry, this is 1. This is the girdles 2 and 3. 4. This is part of 1, so 5 here. 6, 7 on the top side, which is right here. So in total, you have 7 different cuts. And it makes it have that kind of layered geometry look. So at this point now, I'm gonna polish up a little bit. I have a little bit more time than I thought. So far the video's only been going for about 40 minutes, so I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. So what I'm gonna end up doing is actually doing a couple of the polishes so y'all can see what it looks like. It'll definitely take more than 15 minutes though. And if it doesn't, I'll be very surprised. Okay. Pull off the cutting topper. Okay, and then I'm going to grab this from right behind the camera. This is my cerium oxide polishing lamp. It's equivalent to a 50K, I believe, grit, and it specifically polishes quartz varieties very, very well. So since citrine is part of the quartz family, it is our family or species of rock. It's going to end up polishing these much better than it would polish other types of stones. Okay. There we go. You know, you're a true artist if you stick your tongue out while you're doing something. And I'm just looking for my rag that I was using to dry things off with. There we go. Alright. I'm going to begin with this. So right away I'm already beginning to see results with this polish. If I pull it off a smidge, you'll probably be able to see it as well. It's the side that will look bright, shiny white versus matte white. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. Right there. You can kind of see it's starting to be a little bit clear. Even with just that very minimal amount of touch. This is, like I said, a pretty good polishing lap for this type of material, so it'll polish it really quickly. Yeah, that's coming out very well. Now, in the case of polishing, you can kind of cut into the stone and change where some of the lines move, but not very much. You don't want to do that very much because you'll wear out your polishing lap, and your polishing laps are generally much more expensive than your cutting laps. Um, so, in this case, I'm just applying enough pressure to get this to clear up. I'm not wanting to actually cut any more material off of it. Now it will subtly move, especially on your tips and points of like a triangle where two facets come together. You would be able to see movement even with as fine of a polish as a 50,000 like I'm using. But in this case, you still are trying to be kind of careful to make sure you're not doing that very much. Okay, I'm still seeing streaks on here, so I'm gonna apply a little bit more. And the polish, in my specific case right now, is a misnomer because I'm not actually using a polishing compound. I'm just using a material that polishes the stone. Sometimes there can be material that gets on there. It's starting to look really good though. Wow. Moving my head around a little bit too to be able to see different angles. Different angles offer a little bit different refractivity of light off of the surface or light travel path, so it helps to be able to see what you're doing and how you're cutting. So I'm gonna call that one good for now and see how these other ones turn out, and then I'll come back to it if I want to add some more. This polish is just amazing how well and quickly it works. Barely have to do anything, barely any pressure, and it will polish up nice. Okay. Alright. It'll sound more rough too as it's polishing off, and as soon as it gets to a smoother state where there's been a lot of the material that has been polished, the sound will actually change and it'll become less of a rough sound and more of um, a smooth glass-like sound. That's looking real sharp at this point. Okay. Ah, that's looking real nice. I'll show you all in a second. Whoa, almost dropped it. Don't want to drop it because sometimes when the machine drops really quickly, it'll hit the hard stop, which is where the head will physically stop to whatever angle you have it set to, and that vibration or shock can cause the gem to break off the end of the dop stick, which is this brass piece right here that the gem is actually attached to. So you don't really want that to happen.